Jimmy Smith will tell you it's time for Bay Area baseball, past, present, and future. I am back, and welcome to the very first edition of Bay Area baseball, past, present, and future. My guest today is a filmographer and all-time Giant fan, Mr. Jon Leonoudakis. How are you, John?
Great, Ralph. Thanks for having me.
Oh, pleasure. We have technical difficulties around here, and you are a very patient young man.
I try to be.
Hey, you've been here before. The first time I had you was when I talked to the great Arnold Haino. You brought him to the show. You did a documentary on Haino, and why don't you refresh the audience's memory about that real briefly, because I want to talk to you about a number of other things today. It was so great for me, and I felt guilty for months because I thought I shortchanged you on the interview. And when we spoke the other day, you put my mind at ease. Arnold is really terrific. He gets most of the questions, doesn't he?
Well, he is, and he's a rock star. And one of the reasons I decided to make the film about Arnold was that he led this remarkable life, not only as a terrific writer and legendary sports writer, but as a social activist who's really worked hard to make our world a better place. And this guy has really walked the talk. And I thought it was very important for people to know about him and his accomplishments as professionally and personally. Because it's such a fantastic story, and I found it very inspirational. And the film has been met with a lot of acclaim and just really wonderful response all across the country, and especially at some of our terrific baseball groups, such as Sabre.
Yeah. I'm thrilled to have you for that reason. But before that, you made a documentary about the 1989 earthquake and how it related to the Giants the day the World Series stopped. And I could tell you where I was. It was the big earthquake in the Bay Area. And where were you that day?
Well, I was at Candlestick Park, and it was I've been a lifelong Giants fan since about '64, and that was going to be my first World Series game. So I borrowed my dad's VHS camcorder. It was a beautiful Magnavox camera. Back then, it sold for about $800, a lot of money back in the day. And so my brother had a ticket. I drove up from Los Angeles, got out there. We got out there nice and early, hung out with some fans, started recording some pageantry out in the ballpark, made our way inside. Got to our seats probably about 10 minutes until 5, and then and our seats were right between third base and left field. I think we were row U or something, and then we were hungry, so I went to get some hot dogs, and when I was standing in line to get the hot dogs, that's when the earthquake occurred.
Whoa. Maybe 5 minutes before the game was scheduled to start, am I correct?
Actually, it was at 5:04. I think the first pitch was maybe 5:25 that day, but they were getting ready to do the opening lineup announcements.
Okay. You were separated from your dad at that moment.
My brother.
Oh, your brother. Okay, I thought you said.
Yeah, he brought me to the game, but it was very easy to get back to him. But the thing I remembered most was what all of us Californians do is when you feel an earthquake, you look to find a place to protect yourself from falling debris. And I had no chance because I had that giant canopy over my head weighing tons and tons and tons. And there was a lot of people still coming into the game, and it was just clogged with people. So I just said, that's it. If it comes down, it's over. And I have no options, no nothing. It was a very scary moment.
Wow. Yeah. And we're talking about an old ballpark that I don't know if it had been retrofitted at the time.
It had been. thanks to some civil engineers gave somebody a heads up about 4 years earlier. And this is one of the reasons we didn't experience such a giant catastrophe that day, because they put in 4 expansion joints around the canopy of the stadium. And even though some pieces of the stadium did come loose up around right center field and center field way up high, the stadium held. But I believe those expansion joints were quite helpful.
Thank you, socialism. When you think about it, that was a little Bernie commercial as we got into it. Yeah, wow, very scary. I was living in the East Bay in Oakland at the time, sitting out on the back porch. My son's mother was pregnant, and she was in Berkeley, and I was very, very scared. We did right away. The radio went off, and took a few minutes to get back. And yeah, I can very well imagine.
Yeah, so, social media back then for all of us in the ballpark were the transistor radios, and
right.
We really didn't know how bad things were until we got out into the parking lot, and people had those little portable TVs. We saw the footage of the collapse of the Bay Bridge, and of course what happened down in the marina, and of course all the terrible business that happened further down the peninsula. But if people are interested in the film, they can go to the website. My website is called dayworldseriesstopped.com, and the film is available.
It is readily available.
It is.
Is there anything about Joe DiMaggio in that film?
Yeah, there was I believe there was a post-mortem somewhere in there, and there's an image of Joe waiting in line with the rest of the marina residents to, see what happened to his house, to see if it got red tagged. But it was very minimal.
If you check out that image that has circulated about with Joe DiMaggio, he's holding a shopping bag. I don't know if that is the same image that's in your documentary.
Might be different, but go ahead.
And the story goes that Joe was carrying like $100,000 in cash and around in that bag that he had stored somewhere for somebody or some group of folks, and that was big bucks. And he's standing out there, like you say, with everybody else. He had a house in the marina, and he couldn't get to it. And he had an aunt, a sister living in the house. It was horrifying for everybody, and it wasn't just baseball. What made you think, I'm going to do a documentary? It must have been that camera that you bought, that you're getting some footage, and let's put it to use.
Well, yeah, let me go back to your Joe DiMaggio story, because some of the stories that have gone on, I've heard a similar story. But it's all very apocryphal. Don't know if it's true, but what I had heard, well, first of all, the authorities saw Joe DiMaggio standing in line with everybody. They said, "Hey, Joe, do you want to, we'll move you to the head of the line and go on?" He said, "No, I want to wait my turn. I'm, a citizen just like anybody else." But the story about supposedly his house had been red tagged, and a couple of his friends were allowed to retrieve some items from the house, and allegedly emerged with 2 big hefty bags filled with $600,000 in cash from signing.
Okay.
Well, who knows? Who knows if it's even true? But it makes for a great story. But all of it was from signing baseballs and baseball bats and so forth. And with respect to making the film, we had taught. When I went to film school, and they said, as a filmmaker, always have a camera with you. You never know what's going to happen, especially with a big event. And I came not only with a video camera, but I also came with my still camera, and I probably had about 10 rolls of film. And so I photographed probably the only recorded panoramas of the interior of the stadium minutes after the earthquake had occurred. And so I was fortunate. My family had a home in the city, so even though I was visiting, I could stay the intervening 10 days. I continued to shoot and gather news footage of my dad's VCR, and I went back to the game when it resumed. And I realized, I've got a really good 3-act story here. And 20 years after the fact, or 25 years after the fact, I put it all together. I actually rented Candlestick Park for a day, which was fantastic. And that was in March, the year before they took the facility down. But it was It was great to be there, and it was really a nice way for me to be able to say goodbye to Candlestick Park.
What was your first game as a kid, basically, in 1964?
My dad took my brother and I to a night game. I remember it vividly. We sat in the bleachers, left field bleachers. They were playing the St. Louis world champion St. Louis Cardinals. And I remember that Tito Francona was the left fielder that night for the Cardinals.
That's that great name, Tito Fuentes, Tito Francona, Tito Jackson. It's a wonderful name.
It is.
It is. And Tito's was the father of Terry Francona, who went on to manage the Red Sox and break that Yankee, that Babe Ruth jinx and all of that. So, it's amazing what we remember. And did they win or lose? Let me ask you that.
I don't remember, but I think one of my most memorable games as a kid was a doubleheader of the Giants playing the New York Mets, 1967. We were sitting first row along the left field line, and in between games, 3 New York Mets came over and were hanging out, and they kind of talked to us a little bit. Ron Swoboda was one of them. He was very full of himself, as I recall. Johnny Lewis was a reserve outfielder, didn't say much, but a young guy, I think he was a rookie at the time, and he was a pitcher.
Came from the Cardinal organization, did Johnny?
That's correct, Johnny Lewis did. But this young guy was really nice.
Memory. Go ahead.
But there was a young guy, he was a pitcher, and he was a rookie, and he was really nice. He spent a lot of time talking to us kids, and it was just my brother and a couple of friends, and he signed the back of my ticket, and he turned out to be a guy named Tom Seaver.
Oh, wow. Whoa. George.
So, that was one of my favorite moments going to a game as a kid.
Very, very cool. That I like that a lot. So you became a Giant fan, and so much so that all these many years later, you attended a fantasy camp where you got to actually put on the uniform, join a team. Tell me about that a little bit, how that works.
Well, the San Francisco Giants fantasy camp has been on my bucket list for a long, long time. Baseball is part of what I do for a living as a baseball documentarian. So I had a number of objectives of why I wanted to go. One of them was I wanted to experience what it was like playing that game. I had not played organized hardball since 1972, so it had been 44 years. I played a lot of softball since then, but it's a much different dynamic. To experience being a Giant, wearing the uniform, being in the Giants' Scottsdale spring training facility, being attended to by the trainers and the clubhouse people, and all of that was something. The other thing I wanted to do is I'm always looking for more stories, and wonderful storytellers. Baseball players can be terrific storytellers, and I was on a mission to find a few to interview for my current documentary project, and all of those goals were achieved. But I went, a lot of people, 2/3 of the people who attended were returning people who'd been there before. They called them the veterans. I was one of the rookies. There were 112 people who attended. There were 8 teams with 14 people on them. But a lot of people came, fathers came with sons, or brothers came with each other. One father came with his daughter. Best friends came with each other. Good friends came with each other.
They match up skill levels. So when you're on these different teams, you're playing teams that have pretty much the same talent as on your team. In other words,
I think that is the case. What happens is the first day you're out on the field, you are assessed by all of the coaches who are former Giants players. Everybody gets looked at for catching, throwing, fielding, hitting, etc. And then the coaches have a draft that afternoon. So, everybody gets drafted. By the way, there were 9 women in the camp, and they all could play. Some of them could really rake, too. Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, one of them won the Hobie Landreth Camp Award for Best Catcher. And this was a gal, I think she was 32 years old, but she played, she was also a pitcher and a catcher, softball player in college. A really nice gal named Katie.
Was Hobie there, just out of curiosity?
He was there. Hobie's 85 years old. 85 years old, and he was the ambassador. sort of an emeritus coach. And, and what was great about this was a lot of these coaches, we all lockered in the same area. So down the way from me was Jim Barr, Mike McCormick, and Hobie Landreth.
Wow. I mean, all those names really come at you. But what comes at me is your coach. Your coach was the Hackman.
We had Hackman Leonard and Scott Gereltz, and Hackman was a last-minute replacement for Mark Davis, who was unable to attend.
Ah, okay. Hackman brings up the 87 Giants in my head, and that flap down, run around the bases. Tell me a little bit about him. He has, he was nicknamed Penitentiary Face.
Yes.
And what that means to me, I met him once. He was a coach with the A's in the minors. I was the Topps representative for a lot of years in the 80s and 90s. And I got to know him a little bit. He is so much different than, it's the book and cover thing. He's a warm, gentle guy. And he has a nice smile. And, that moniker really set him back the way I look at it. Did you find him to be that way?
I saw two sides of him. First of all, I think all professional athletes are competitors, and they don't like losing at tiddlywinks. And certainly, coming to camp, people want to win. People want to win those games. And the Hackman, he's got a lot of fire in his belly. And he was a good coach. I got a couple of really good tips from him. But two things. He really wanted to do anything possible for our team to win. He was in charge of the strategy. Scott was sort of the assistant coach. And their two personalities could not be further apart. Scott's very soft-spoken and a very gentle and a nice guy, but also a fiery competitor at the end of the day. But Hack he made no bones about it. We're here to win. Let's get out there. He said, one of the great batting tips he gave me and some of the other teams, he goes, you're all standing too far away from the plate. Get up right next to the inside of the plate. Fuck them. Let them hit you. I hope swearing's okay. You can bleep it out if you need to.
Is that like I'm going to bleep fuck out, right?
But the other side of him was
excuse me, but you had to be in my head for the last 58 years since I learned the word.
There you go. But there was one night we had to take our coaches. We took our coaches out to dinner. And there were all 14 of us. We had the two guys there. And Hack was very cool. When we all sat down, he said, I want everybody to take a moment, go around the table, introduce yourselves, let us know a little bit about you. So, he actually wanted to understand you for a little bit more than you were just a camper and he's just there for X number of days. He's going to get in and he's going to get out and get his money. And that wasn't him at all. And certainly many other coaches, some of them were like, I remember somebody said they made a mistake on the field, and they went in and talked to one of the former Giant coaches. And they said, well, what happened? What could I do better? He goes, hell, I don't know. I wasn't even looking,
Hey,
but it was a great experience.
Landreth for a minute. Hobie should have been at the Mets camp because he was really kind of an unknown as a Giant. He wasn't. He got his notoriety from being the first pick ever in the expansion draft in 1961 when they were trying to pick the Mets. Yeah. And tell me about him, his stories, anything that comes to mind?
Great stories. First of all, what a sweet, nice, gentle man. The first thing I asked him was, I said, do you still have your original knees that God gave you? He said, nope. They've both been replaced, as has been my hip. He lives in Sunnyvale, the house he bought in 1960 when he was with the Giants. And he talked about getting drafted by the Mets, and he wasn't very happy about the deal because he felt like he wasn't really getting the compensation he deserved. And he ended up being traded for Marvelous Marv Throneberry. Absolutely,
Baltimore Orioles. And, wow, you remember almost everything, don't you, John?
Well, certainly that's what he told me, and I've got some of Hobie's baseball cards from the early 50s and 60s. Yeah, I think he has one of the great baseball names too.
Hobie Landreth.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like Ted Savage. Remember that name?
It rolls off the tongue. One great story I heard from somebody else at the camp, that when Hobie really got his first shot in baseball was he was a catcher in high school, and somebody said, "Hey, they need someone to catch some pitchers." I forget what level team it was. Maybe it was a minor league team. It could have been a major league team. And he said, "Sure, I'll go down and catch," because it was all baseball to him. And he caught pitchers for about 3 hours, and the manager of the team came down and said, "Hey, kid, have you had your hacks yet? Get up there and take some hits." And so he got up and hit, and he did a good job. And the manager said, "You know what? When we do spring training, I want you to come out next year." They liked what they saw.
Right.
And long story short, he ended up on some sort of a national baseball team for teenagers. And who was one of the coaches? Ty Cobb. Now, flash forward to 1960, and at the opening of Candlestick Park, a resident of Atherton, Ty Cobb, is there at the Giants' opening day at Candlestick Park, and one of the clubhouse attendants comes down to Hobie and said, "Hey, Ty Cobb would like to talk with you." And he had no idea Ty Cobb was there. He even lived in the area. He said, "Come on, you're pulling my leg. Cut it out." He said, No, he wants to talk to you. And apparently Ty had a picture of the team that he had coached with Hobie on it, and he signed it for Hobie and gave it to him as a gift. And I thought that was a wonderful story.
Oh, man, absolutely. Good story of how baseball is passed down from generation to generation. Do you have any of that in your family?
Not quite so, but my brothers, who are 10 and 4 years older than me, they really got me hooked on baseball. And 1964 was my coming out party, where all summer long we listened to the Beach Boys and played wiffle ball in a big front yard in a house we had rented down there in Palo Alto. Summers were too cold where we lived in San Francisco, so we went down there. And I remember that was my...
What San Francisco did you live in, John?
Twin Peaks, right between Twin Peaks and West Portal.
Oh, okay.
And so that my brothers, this is where I saw them bringing out these beautiful thin slats of cardboard with beautiful Kodak-color images bursting off of it, and it was baseball cards. And those baseball cards came with a special coin of baseball players in the pack as a little premium added piece, and they were so colorful and beautiful.
That. Yeah, it must have been a local set. Was it Mother's Cookie?
Oh, no. This was the top set, 1964, and it came with a special coin that year. As a matter of fact, I wanted to reclaim that part of my childhood, so I bought a whole bunch of them off eBay, and there's 168 coins in the set. I'm about 4 coins away from finishing it, but I wanted to reclaim that special moment in my childhood.
Very, very nice. That something I didn't even remember. The Tops put coins in there, and I remember getting the stale piece of bubble gum that is responsible for many dentists going on holiday, and having a great life at my expense and other kids' expense.
No, indeed.
What's your favorite moment at the camp? I mean, thinking back, it's been, 2 or 3 weeks now, and you've had you told me all the soreness is gone from that. You have soreness you have a women's softball league that you're involved with. No,
I just happened to do a little workout with a friend of mine's daughter who is on a softball team at a high school in the East Bay. I think it's called Acalanes. And so...
Absolutely.
That's right. So I worked out with his daughter, one of the best softball players, high school players, who has got a full ride to Cal. So I'd worked out with her before a few years ago, and hey, they said bring your glove, and anytime anybody says that, I'm there.
You're there. Nice.
But memories about
favorite moment at camp?
Yeah. Well, this was, I kind of call it a moment of truth. Our team made it to the semifinal. and we ended up playing Mike McCormick and Jim Barr's team, who had won the championship the year before, and they were undefeated up to that point. And so whoever won that game would go on to be in the championship game. And the camp is set up. There are 3 practice games, and then you play in at least 3 tournament games, and it's single elimination. And so I had not. Like many other campers, I prepared for this camp. I literally trained. I spent 6 weeks going to a baseball academy here in Los Angeles to take hitting practice and fielding practice because I hadn't played baseball in a long, long time, and I wanted to be ready for the speed of the game. I love being able to hit with a wood bat again. Boy, there's nothing better than hitting a ball in a sweet spot on a wood bat.
The sound it makes.
The sound is don't get me started on aluminum bats. But in any case, so I was an 0 for those first 3 games, and I was very, very frustrated. I'd spent all this time training and so on and so forth, and I was able to finally relax. And the first tournament game, I went 3 for 3 with an RBI. I even pitched a scoreless inning of relief, which was really surprising. I hadn't even planned on doing it, but I said, what the heck? They didn't have enough people who wanted to pitch, and they didn't have any lefties, so I'm lefty. So we won that game. Then the next day we were playing the champs, McCormick's team, and my bat got real hot, and my first at bat I smacked a double down the line, and I think that was the only major extra base hit in the game. So that was nice to be able to get some good wood off of that. And then the other thing I really enjoyed at the end of the camp, everybody got an at bat against a former Giants pitcher, and all the other coaches were playing the field, and they had an umpire calling balls and strikes. So the first pitcher up was Sean Estes. Now Sean, I think he retired maybe 5-7 years ago, not all that long ago, and he was just mowing people down. Coming at him with great heat, curveballs and change-ups. Hardly anybody got anything on him. And if anybody did, it was off an aluminum bat. But thankfully for me, I didn't have to face him. I ended up facing Trevor Wilson. What a nice guy. And of course, Trevor.
Topps contract years ago. Trevor.
Yeah, nice guy. And he used to throw in the high 90s. And thank goodness he took it easy on us. So I faced him, and the ball came in about 65 miles an hour, and part of my training was I had to be able to hit pitches thrown between 50 and 70 miles an hour, so I would gauge from all of that as I would go to the local batting cage. And, both pitches, the pitch that I hit for the double came in at about 65 miles an hour, and then that was off. That was the one in the game was off of another camper.
Off another camper. Okay.
Yeah, campers play each other, and he was a nice young guy. He was 41-year-old fellow from Santa Cruz who loved to surf. Good guy, but he threw hard. But anyhow, so Trevor's pitch came in. I went 3-0 on him, and one of the things Joe Youngblood, who was a great hitting instructor there, said, "Do not swing at a ball you cannot get your bat on." So it was very selective, and of course the first pitch that came in for a strike, I took a hack at it, and it was a nice clean single over second into right field. And who, of course, fielded it? Hackman Leonard.
Oh, right. Very cool. Joe Youngblood. Wow, many Joe Youngblood stories. He played for he got hits for two different teams in one day.
It was doubleheader, right? He got traded in the middle of the game or something.
No, he played for the Mets, a day game, and got traded to Montreal, who played a night game, and he went up to Montreal.
Okay.
But
Joel, by the way, all of these guys look like they've kept themselves in good shape.
Oh, that's nice to hear, too.
And I believe Joel is a coach somewhere in baseball, but Joel's major role was every day at 7 o'clock in the morning, he was ready to provide hitting instruction, whether it was off the tee or soft toss or pitching from behind a screen. He gave excellent instruction. And he had this one game. It was called "Get the Fuck Out of My Cage." And the way the game worked was that he would pitch to you, and if you hit 3 balls that were either grounders or pop-ups that didn't get to where he was on the screen, he would yell at you, "Get the fuck out of my cage!" And of course, it was all done with good fun
of course.
behind it. And you get in there, and so I learned some great tips from Joel, and he's an intense guy, but all of the people on his team enjoyed him. I enjoyed working with him as a coach. Hackman, again, he also did some personalized batting instruction, but just for the people on his team. And he and Joel did a little seminar together one day out on the field, which was terrific.
Beautiful. Hey, thank you, John. This has been great. I hope you will continue to come back, because
my pleasure, Ralph.
Yeah, you are my pleasure to have to be on. And I'm going to end the segment the way I do most of them, if not all. I'm going to implore you and everybody out there to keep your dreams wet and your humor dry. Keep your kids off the laps of clerics that wear dresses and out of the offices of military recruiters. And most importantly, keep on keeping on. Thanks, my man. We'll talk to you again, John.
Thanks, Ralph.
Have a great one.
You too.